righty, thank you very much. Genesis chapter 42 is where we begin this evening. We've been looking at Jesus in the Old Testament, and we got up to Joseph in chapter 37 here a few weeks ago. I think this would be our fifth lesson just on Joseph, and we should finish it up tonight. But Joseph started off as a 17-year-old in our lesson. In chapter 37, he was hated by his brothers because he was his dad's favored son, and had dreams of his brothers bowing to him, and that didn't sit well with big brothers. And they wanted to kill him, but they ended up selling him, and he ended up down in Egypt as a slave to Pharaoh's officer Potiphar. And then he, just like cream, came right to the top, and the Lord put him in charge of the whole estate down there of Potiphar, everything that he owned and had and did. And Joseph was the one in charge. And the Lord blessed Potiphar, not because of Potiphar, but because of Joseph. He blessed Potiphar for Joseph's sake. And because he blessed Joseph, the Lord was with Joseph, and he made all that he did to prosper. And Joseph was very, very impressive young man in his character. He was impressive in his values and work habits and work ethic, and just the fact that the Lord had his hand upon him and the Lord was with him. He was a very, very impressive young man. And evidently, he must have been quite handsome as well. He just had it all. He had everything. And Mrs. Potiphar laid her eyes on him, and she was wicked. But Joseph was not, and she ended up telling lies about him and absolutely destroyed his reputation, but she didn't touch his character. And so he got thrown in jail because of her lies, thrown into prison. And again, because of his character, not his reputation, because of his character, the Lord is still with him because God blesses character, not reputation. And even in the prison, he became the man in charge of all the prisoners. And the Lord is with him. And again, the Bible says the Lord made all that he did to prosper. Well, while he's in prison running that show, Pharaoh has a couple officers, a couple of servants, a butler and a baker, that he gets displeased with and throws them into prison, and they happen to be in there with Joseph, who again is the head prisoner. I don't know how much weight that carries, but it did a lot with Joseph. And they each had a dream and didn't know, and they were sad and everything, and Joseph explained a dream to them because God was with Joseph and allowed Joseph to do that. And one of them, he said, you're going to get your job back. That was the butler. And the other one, he said, you're going to get hanged, which was the baker. And he was right on both counts. The butler got his job back, and the baker got hanged. And so he went back to work for Pharaoh. And Joseph asked him, hey, when you get back to work for Pharaoh, would you remind him about me down here in the prison? And he forgot. He forgot to do that. The butler forgot to say anything. But a couple of years passed, and Pharaoh himself had a dream. Matter of fact, he had two dreams. You remember the story, and about skinny cows and fat cows, and skinny corn, scrawny corn, and full-eared corn, and then Pharaoh didn't know what it meant, and his wise men didn't know what it meant. So that's when the light came on with the butler. Said, hey, I remember a couple of years ago you were mad at me and threw me in prison, and there was a young man down there, a Hebrew young man, and he told me about a dream that I had, and sure enough, he got it right on the head, and I got my job back just like he said, and the baker got hanged just like he said. And so Pharaoh said, well, send and fetch him. So he cleaned himself up and went to stand before Pharaoh. The head prisoner went to stand before the head of the whole country. And you know the story. He told Pharaoh what the dreams were. Both dreams were about the same thing. There's going to be 7 years of great plenty and a wonderful harvest and just a tremendous crops for 7 years. But that's going to be followed by 7 years of great plenty. There's going to be a huge famine, terrible famine. And so what you need to do is, while you got these 7 years of great plenty, you need to store up while you got it to store up, so you'll be ready and prepared to take care of the 7 years when you don't have anything. And so Pharaoh was wowed by that. He said, man, I've never seen anybody so wise as you. Why don't you be the man in charge to put all that together and organize that? So he moved from the prison to the palace in one day, again, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. And so Joseph is now the man. And we left off in chapter 41 that anybody, anywhere, pretty much anywhere on the earth that came to Egypt for bread, as in food, because Egypt had it, the instructions were, go to Joseph. What he saith to you, do. That's chapter 41, verse 55. Joseph opened all the storehouses, and all countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because the famine was so sore in all lands. But here's Egypt. They got plenty because Joseph had the hand of God upon him. And through those 7 years of plenty, he didn't waste what he had. He stored up what they had. And they had then plenty when the famine came. They not only had plenty for Egypt, they had plenty for the whole world. Now there's a good type of Christ too. That wasn't one of the points, but we'll throw it in since it came up. There's enough for the whole world. That's why he told us to take it to the whole world. Take the gospel of Christ, the news of Christ, the person of Christ to the whole world. Preach the gospel to every creature, because there's enough. As he said, he is the bread of life in John chapter 6, verse 35. And there's enough for not just the immediate people, but not just the Jews, but for the whole world. And there we go. So in the course of the whole world going through a famine, and Egypt having enough for the whole world, the famine even reached Canaan, where Jacob and the brethren were. Chapter 42 is where we begin. Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, why do you look one upon another? And he said, behold, I have heard that there's corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. Number 11 was Benjamin, verse 4, Joseph's brother. Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall. Jacob didn't want what happened to Joseph, or what he thinks happened to Joseph, as in namely a wild animal got him, ate him up. He doesn't want that to happen to Benjamin, so Benjamin doesn't get to go on this trip to Egypt to get groceries, lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land. He it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, whence come ye? They said, from the land of Canaan, to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. As far as they knew, he was dead. And if not dead, some insignificant slave in some remote part of Egypt. It never entered their mind in the faintest way that he would be alive and the governor over all the land. And they had no clue that they were standing right in his presence. Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. That will connect us to Jesus right there. Did you recognize that one? He came into his own, John chapter 1, verse 10, and his own received him not. Even before that, he said he was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. Their own creator, and they didn't know him. He went to his own, as in the Jewish people, Israel. And his own received him not. But aren't you glad for verse 12 in John chapter 1? But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. And so, because they knew him not, they rejected him. That's the reason he ended up dying on the cross, because of their rejecting him. And his dying on the cross is what brought salvation to all the rest of us. Romans chapter 11 refers to the unbelievable wisdom of God in figuring all that out, putting all that together. Verse 9 says, Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them. He's got 10 of his brothers right there in front of him. And the Bible, says that they came and bowed down themselves before him. Verse number 6 says, with their faces to the earth. And he remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them. He had 2 of them, remember? The first one, it just said that their sheaves were going to bow down to his sheaf. But the second one specifically mentioned that 11 brethren were going to make obeisance to him. This is in Genesis chapter 37, and that would be around verse 7, 8, 9, 10, in that little range right in there. That second dream is the one that had 11 brothers making obeisance, bowing and making obeisance, as in bowing at his feet in great respect and worship and honor. And he remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, Ye are spies. To see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said unto him, Nay, my Lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We're all one man's sons. We're all brothers. We all got the same dad. We're true men. We're thy servants. And we have come to buy food. We're not spies. And he said unto them, verse 12, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land. You just want to come down because your land is barren, and you want to come down and see how bad our land is. And they said, thy servants, talking about themselves, are 12 brethren. Now, there's only 10 of them there. 11 including Joseph, but they don't know Joseph is one of them. They said, Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. Behold, the youngest is this day with our father. That would be Benjamin, who didn't get to come because he is daddy's new favorite, since Joseph is supposedly dead. And one is not. As in, he's dead. One of them doesn't live anymore. One is not. Well, I don't know. This might seem like a weird way to connect it when they say one is not. But concerning Jesus, Jesus is the one who is. Even though at one point for 3 days you might have been able to say he is not. But after 3 days he is again. And he always has been, is. Does that make sense? That's good grammar, isn't it? And he always will be, is. He is just the am is what he is, as in the I am. And so, again, it's an indirect or backwards connection. But they're saying one is not because that's what they think. And quite honestly, that's what they hope. Because we'll see here in just a few minutes. While Joseph remembered the dreams, they did too. Joseph said unto them, verse 14, that is it that I spake unto you, saying, you're spies. Hereby ye shall be proved. I think this was a plan that Joseph had. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. Send one of you, and let him fetch your brother, and ye shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh surely you're spies. So I'm going to keep 9 of you guys here in prison. I'm going to send one of you back to get your little brother. And then if that happens, if he goes home, get your little brother, brings him back, then okay, I'll take your word that you really are true men and you're not spies. He put them all together into ward, as in prison, 3 days. And Joseph said unto them the 3rd day, this do and live, for I fear God. If you be true men, as in you're telling me the truth, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses, as in take it back to your families. But bring your youngest brother unto me, so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. So he came to him 3 days later and said, all right, instead of keeping 9 and sending 1, I will keep 1 and send 9. Y'all go back home. Take this food to your families, but bring your younger brother back, and then I'll know that you're telling me the truth. And notice verse 21. They said one to another. These are the 10 brothers talking to each other. Verse 21. They said one to another, we are verily guilty concerning our brother, talking about Joseph, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. They're talking about what they did to Joseph. You know, it has been at least 20 years since that happened. And they still got a guilty conscience about that. Some people think time heals all wounds. Well, it didn't heal this one. 20 years. They still got a guilty conscience. 20 years they're still regretting what they did. 20 years they're still talking about it. We're guilty. They're saying the reason we're in this predicament now, somehow or other, we got to get back home, and we got to get Dad talked into letting Benjamin come, because Dad was adamant he is not going. They know that. Now what are they going to do? Reuben answered them, saying, spake I not unto you, saying, do not sin against the child, and you would not hear? Therefore, behold, also his blood is regarded. Reuben was, remember, the one that kept them from killing him. Talked him into basically throwing him in a pit and selling him to the people that came along. He said, I told you so. This is what he said. This is more than 20 years later. But the things they said here to each other in verse 21, we're guilty. They are. Same as the Jews when they rejected Jesus. His blood be on our head. That's what they said. Concerning our brother. That's who it was about, Jesus. We saw the anguish of his soul. They saw that they heard him plead with them. How often would I have gathered thee together, even as a chicken doth gather a hen doth gather her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. They saw the anguish of his soul as he hung on the cross. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. They saw the anguish of his soul in the garden when they came with the band of men and officers. He'd been sweating, as it were, great drops of blood. He besought us. Is what they said about Joseph. That's what Jesus did. We already mentioned that. And we would not hear. We will not have this man to reign over us. They wouldn't listen to him. He told them in John chapter 8, ye therefore hear them not, speaking about God's words, because you're not of God. They wouldn't hear what he said. They would not listen. Therefore is this distress come upon us. They were exactly right. There was a whole lot bigger picture than they're seeing, but their guilty conscience is justified. And the rejection of Christ by his Jewish brethren, again, it had a whole lot bigger picture to it than what they were seeing. They didn't have a clue that by their rejection of Christ and the cry for him to be crucified, they were putting everything in place for him to become the Savior of the world. Not just the Jews, Gentiles too. Us specifically, personally. And Reuben said, I told you so. Spake I not unto you, saying, do not sin against the child, and you did not hear? By the way, Israel's always had a problem with that. You would not hear. When Stephen the deacon got stoned to death in chapter 7 of the book of Acts, if you read chapter 7, he gave them a thorough history lesson about the history of Israel and their long record of not hearing. Every time God would raise up a significant figure for a significant reason in their history, they missed it every time, culminating with Jesus himself. They were cut to the heart, convicted so deep they didn't know what to do. Rather than repent in sackcloth and ashes and fall on their face and beg for forgiveness, they threw rocks at Stephen until they killed him. Well, that's what the power of the Holy Ghost will do. That's what conviction will do sometimes. Some people will repent in tears. And some people will throw rocks until they eliminate the messenger. But there was one guy that gave his approval to eliminating the messenger, but he couldn't throw rocks at the message. And it pricked his conscience, and it pricked it for quite a long while, and eventually that man, his name was Saul of Tarsus, was walking down the Damascus road with the intention to find some more Christians that he could kill, and finally the conviction knocked him right in the dust, right on his face in the dirt. And Jesus said to him, it's hard for you to kick against the pricks, isn't it? He said, who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I'm Jesus, whom thou persecutest. That wasn't the answer he was expecting, but that's the answer he got. He eliminated the messenger, but he didn't eliminate the message. And these guys here, they were going to eliminate the dreamer, but they couldn't eliminate the dream. And here's an interesting thing, verse 23. They're sitting there or standing there or whatever they're doing, but they're all together, these 10 brothers, and they're talking to themselves, amongst themselves. And verse 23 says, they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. That's another thing, another connection. Everything the Pharisees, the Jews said, plotted, schemed, conspired, Jesus knew all about it. When they asked him questions like, by what authority doest thou these things? When they asked him the questions about, should we give tribute unto Caesar or not? Thinking they got him. If he says yes, then they're going to accuse him of being unfaithful to God. If he says no, they're going to accuse him of being unfaithful to Caesar, a disloyal to the emperor, and either one's going to cost them their life, either at the hand of the Jews for being blasphemous against God, don't give God the tribute to God, or being blasphemous to the Roman emperor. That'll cost you your life from the Romans. So they figured they had him, but Jesus knew exactly why they weren't asking because they were curious. They weren't asking because they had questions and they're trying to learn and they want to be informed and they want to be educated and they want to be intelligent and they want to be right about this. They're trying to catch him in a trap, trying to catch him in his words. And he gave them answers that they didn't expect. When they asked about his authority, he said, well, let me ask you a question. What about the baptism of John? Where did he get his authority? Was his authority from heaven or was it from men? They didn't know how to answer that because they said, well, if we say it's from heaven, he said, well, why in the world didn't you believe him then? And if we say, well, it's just men, everybody's going to stone them because everybody thought John was a prophet. And he was. So when it came up, who do we give tribute to? Do we give tribute to Caesar or do we not? So, well, you give to Caesar what's Caesar's, you give to God what's God. That's not what he was supposed to say. Never man spake like this man. They didn't know that he knew what was in their heart. They didn't know. He knew even the thoughts and intents of their heart. He knew what was in their heart. He knew what they were saying. He knew what was spoken in secret. And they didn't know that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. And he turned himself about from them and wept, returned to them again, communed with them. And he took from them Simeon and bound him before their eyes. Simeon is the one that he decided, this is the one I'm going to keep. Let the rest of you go. Reuben was the eldest. Reuben was the one that saved his life when they wanted to kill him, way back when he was 17 years old. Simeon is the second oldest. And so he kept Simeon, bound him right in front of them, before their eyes. And Joseph commanded them to fill their sacks with corn, and he told his servants to restore every man's money into his sack and to give them provision for the way. And thus did he unto them. That'll connect you to Isaiah 55. Buy food without bread, without money, and without cost. So they laid it down, so they loaded up everything and took off down the road. And they stopped at the first stop for the first evening at the motel, the inn. And one of the guys opened his sack to feed the donkey and saw the money in there. It was in the sack's mouth. And he said to his brother, my money's restored. It's even in my sack. Their heart failed them. They were afraid, saying, what is this God hath done to us? And they came unto Jacob their father unto the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell unto them, saying, the man who is the Lord of the land spake roughly to us and took us for spies of the country. And we said unto him, we are true men, we're no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take food for the famine of your households. Be gone, bring your youngest brother unto me. Then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you, your brother, and ye shall traffic in the land. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. When both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. Jacob their father said unto them, me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not. That's what he thought. And Simeon is not. He knows he's just a prisoner, but he's not in the family. He's not home. He's not here. And you're going to take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. Here's a good lesson. This is not necessarily about our lesson about Jesus in the Old Testament. Here's a good lesson. All these things are against me from his point of view. But he didn't see the whole picture. It's important that we remember that. When God is working, we don't usually see the whole picture. Not usually. The whole picture is exactly the opposite. All these things are not against him. All these things are setting him up for the biggest reunion of his life. He's going to find out in a couple more chapters. Favorite son Joseph, for over 20 years he thought he's dead. He's not dead. Not only is he not dead, he's not just alive. He is the governor of Israel. And that's not all either. We're going to go see him. All these things are against him. No. All these things were for him, and he didn't know it. Because all he could see was right now. I'm going to have to send Benjamin away. I don't want to do that. I promised I wouldn't. I'm not going to do that. Joseph's already gone. Simeon is going to have to rot away in prison because I'm not sending Benjamin. It's all against me. It was all for him. If he'd just follow it through and wait on God and let God do what God's doing, he got to spend the last 17 years of his life with Joseph. Reuben spake unto his father, saying, slay my 2 sons if I bring him not to thee. In other words, kill my boys if I don't bring Benjamin back. Deliver him into my hand, I'll bring him to thee again. And he said, my son shall not go down with you. His brother is dead, and he's left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in which you go, then shall you bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. You're not taking him. And you know the story. The famine was sore in the land, and they used up all the corn and grain that they had brought back on this first trip. And Jacob said, go again, buy us a little food. And Judah reminded him, we can't, not unless Benjamin goes. You send a brother with us, we'll go down and buy thee food. But if you won't send him, we'll not go down. The man said, you shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. Israel said, wherefore dealt ye so ill with us? Why'd you even tell the man you had a brother? Basically, they said, because he asked. How in the world are we supposed to know what he was going to do? He asked about our father. He asked about our brother. None of that raised any flags. Who is this guy? Why in the world do you want to know about that? Does he ask everybody that comes for food? Does he ask everybody that? We told him according to the tenor of these words, could we certainly know that he would say, bring your brother down? And Joseph said unto Israel his father, send the lad with me. We'll arise and go that we may live and not die, both we and thou and also our little ones. I will be surety for him, verse 9 of chapter 43. Of my hand shalt thou require him. If I bring him not unto thee and set him before thee, then let me bear the blame forever. Well, putting the blame on Judah is not going to bring Benjamin back. I don't think Jacob is real concerned about who gets the blame. He's concerned that Benjamin won't come back. Except we had lingered, surely now would return this second time. And the father of Israel said unto them, if it must be so now, do this. Take of the best fruits in the land in your vessels. Carry down the man, talking about Joseph, but he doesn't know it. Carry down the man a present, a little balm, a little honey, spices, myrrh, nuts, and almonds. Take double money in your hand, and take the money that was brought again in the mouth of your sacks. Carry it again in your hand. Peradventure it was an oversight. Take also your brother, and arise, go again unto the man, and God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may send away your other brother, that be Simeon and Benjamin. If I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. I can only guess. And the men took that present. They took double money in their hand, and Benjamin rose up, went down to Egypt, and stood before Joseph. Verse 16, chapter 43. When Joseph saw Benjamin with him, he said to the ruler of his house, bring these men home, slay and make ready, for these men shall dine with me at noon. You notice Joseph saw them with Benjamin before they saw him. Connection. The father of the prodigal boy, Luke chapter 15, saw him when that prodigal boy said, I will arise and go to my father. the father saw him afar off and ran to him, fell on his neck and kissed him. Said, make ready. We're going to have a big party. Kill the fatted calf. Bring forth a ring and shoes for his feet and the best robe. And kill the fatted calf. We're going to have a party. Bring these men home and slay and make ready. These men shall dine with me at noon. And the man did as Joseph bade, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. The men were afraid. Okay, why are we being called to this guy's house? They said, again, amongst themselves, well, it's because of the money that was in our sacks from the first time we came. He's going to use this as an opportunity to make slaves out of all of us. They came near to the steward of Joseph's house, and they communed with him at the door of the house and said, oh, sir, we came indeed down at the first time to buy food. It came to pass when we came to the end that we opened our sacks, and behold, every man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. We have brought it again in our hand. Here, we brought it back. We don't know how it got there. We just bring it back. And other money have we brought down in our hands to buy more food. We cannot tell who put our money in our sacks. And then the servant said, well, peace be to you. Don't worry about it. Your God, the God of your father, he's the one that gave you treasure in sacks. He said, I had your money, which he did have it. He just gave it back, but he did have it at one time. And he brought Simeon out unto them, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their asses provender. And they made ready the present against Joseph came at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed themselves to him to the earth. And he asked them of their welfare, and said, is your father well? The old man of whom ye spake, is he yet alive? Why does this guy keep asking about their dad? Evidently, it doesn't register with them. Verse 28, they answered, thy servant our father is in good health. He's yet alive. And notice this statement. And they bowed down their heads and made obeisance. Exactly what dream number 2 was about in Genesis 37. I think it's verse 9. And this time there is 11 brothers, not just 10. There is 11. And that's exactly what was numbered in the dream. It specifically said 11 would bow down and make obeisance. This is the second dream. And he lifted up his eyes, saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, said, is this your younger brother of whom he spake unto me? And he said, God be gracious unto thee, my son. And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep, entered into his chamber, and wept there. He left the room, went to another room so he could cry. He was so moved by this. He washed his face, went out and refrained to himself, and said, set on bread. And they set on him for him by himself, and them by themselves, and for the Egyptians which eat with him by themselves. And he sat everybody in birth order, from the eldest to the youngest, according to his birthright. The youngest according to his youth, and the firstborn according to his birthright. And the men marveled. How did he know that? Was that just a coincidence? Was that just an accident? That he sat us in order from oldest to youngest? He keeps asking about our, nothing's registered yet. Still hasn't entered into them. So they had a good time, and Benjamin got 5 times more food than they did. Now, I don't know if he ate 5 times more food, but he got that much. They drank and were merry with him. And then chapter 44, he tells, is a story about, you know, they load up all the grain they get, and they everybody's headed back home. All 11 of them, including Benjamin. Everything's working out just great. This is wonderful. And Joseph tells the steward of his house, saying, fill everybody's sacks with food as much as they can carry, and again put all their money back in the mouth of their sack. And then I want you to take my cup, my silver cup, put it in the sack's mouth of the youngest, in Benjamin's sack. Put his corn money in there. And he did what Joseph said. As soon as the morning was light, at dawn, the men left. They were gone out of the city. They weren't yet far off. Joseph said to us, okay, now here's what I want you to do. Follow after the men. When you catch up to them, say, wherefore have ye rewarded evil for good? Is not this it in which my Lord drinketh, whereby indeed he divineth? Ye have done evil in so doing. And so he did that. He overtook them. He caught up to them. spake unto them those words, and they said, Wherefore saith my Lord these words? God forbid that thy servant should do according to this thing. Behold, the money which we found in our sacks of mouths at the first trip, we brought again unto thee out of the land. How then should we steal out of thy Lord's house silver or gold? With whomsoever thy servant should be found, both let him die, and we also will be my Lord's bondmen. They thought it was safe to say that because they didn't have a clue that anybody had done it. And, of course, nobody had done it. And he said, Now also let it be according unto your words. He with whom it is found shall be my servant, and ye shall be blameless. And the wheels came off. Everything that was going so well just came to a complete collapse. They speedily took down every man his sack to the ground, opened every man his sack. He searched and began at the eldest, left at the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Of all of them, 11 of them, and it was found in his sack. Then they rent their clothes and laid it every man his ass, and returned to the city. And Judah and his brethren came to Joseph's house, for he was yet there, and they fell before him on the ground. And Joseph said unto them, What deed is this that ye have done? Wot ye not that such a man as I can certainly divine? And Judah said, What shall we say unto my Lord? What shall we speak? How shall we clear ourselves? God hath found out the iniquity of thy servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we, and he also with whom the cup is found. And he said, God forbid that I should do so. The man in whose hand the cup is found, he shall be my servant. And as for you, get you up in peace to your father. Judah came near unto him and said, Oh, my Lord, let thy servant, I pray thee, speak a word in my Lord's ears. And he begged and he pleaded with Joseph, Please let Benjamin go. You can keep me, but you have to let Benjamin go. His life, he said in verse 30, is bound up in the lad's life. And he said in verse 31, It shall come to pass when he seeth that the lad is not with us, when we go home and Benjamin is not with us, he, Jacob, Dad, will die. Thy servant shall bring down the gray hairs of thy servant our father with sorrow to the grave. For thy servant became surety for the lad unto my father, saying, If I bring him not unto thee, then I shall bear the blame to my father forever. Now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide, instead of the lad, a bondman to my Lord. Let the lad go up with his brethren. Keep me, take him. Let them take him. How shall I go up to my father? The lad be not with me. Boy, every parent ought to ask themselves that. How can I go to my Father in heaven? I don't even bring my own children with me. Whoa. Lest peradventure I see the evil that shall come on my father. At that point, Joseph could not refrain himself any longer. Verse 1 of chapter 45. And he cried, Cause every man to go out from me. There stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. Oh, all this time, all of this interaction between him and them, everything that had taken place, they didn't know it was him. He knew it was them, but they didn't know it was him. And finally, they get the shock of their life. Joseph made himself known to his brethren. Zechariah 12:10. We don't have time to turn to it. Write it down. Zechariah 12:10 and 13:6. 13 verse 6 and chapter 12 verse 10. When Jesus makes himself known, what are those wounds in thine hands? Those was which I was wounded in the house of my friends. And Jesus makes himself known to his brethren. Verse 2 continues, he wept aloud, Joseph did, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brother, I am Joseph. Does my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. Joseph said unto his brethren, Come near to me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that you sold me hither. Here's a great, great truth. For God did send me before you to preserve life. You sold me, but God sent me. And God used your selling to do his sending. God used all that to get me down here. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land. So Joseph is around 39 years old now. This whole thing started when he was 17. And yet there are 5 more years that this famine is going to last. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth and to save your lives. So now it was not you that sent me hither. He said, it was God. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh and Lord of all his house and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. And then he said this, haste ye and go up to my father and say unto him, thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me. Tarry not. Thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children and thy children's children and thy flocks and thy herds and all that thou hast, and there will I nourish thee. For yet there are 5 years of famine, lest thou and thy household and all that thou hast come to poverty. Behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin is my mouth that speaketh unto you. You shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that ye have seen. And ye shall haste and bring down my father hither. And he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept upon his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brethren and wept upon them. And after that, his brethren talked with him. And the rest of the story, he says, go back, get Dad, bring him down. And he sent wagons to carry the whole clan. So he sent his brethren away, verse 24, and they departed, and he said unto them, see that ye fall not out by the way. And they came into the land of Canaan, verse 25, and to Jacob their father, and told him, saying, Joseph is yet alive. He's governor over all the land of Egypt. Jacob's heart fainted, for he believed them not. They told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said unto them. When he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived, and Israel said, it's enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I'll go and see him before I die. And in chapter 46 he did. And 47, 48, 49, he spent the last 17 years of his life with Joseph. And end of chapter 49 he died. Chapter 50 they take him back to bury him in the family cemetery. And again, the brothers still have that guilty conscience. And this is for 39 and 17 is 56. This is 39 years after what they did. And they still got a guilty conscience. And they still think Joseph holds it against them. And Joseph said one of the great statements of the Bible, you thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good. The end. That's a fascinating story. Now, before we leave, what we read in chapter 45, when Joseph made himself known to his brethren, go back and tell Dad about all my glory, the whole thing. I think it speaks for itself as far as a connection, so we don't necessarily need to go through all the references and everything. That is so clear about the revelation of Jesus Christ, which happens at the close of the tribulation, and the restoration of Israel. There's a picture of a rapture-type reunion when he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. He kissed all his brethren and wept upon them, and after that his brethren talked with him. This is a great picture. I mean, this is moving, this is emotional, this is something, it would make a tearjerker movie if you could see it. But it's not a movie, it really did happen. And it's a picture of what really is going to happen. And it will be a tearjerker. It will be moving. Because this Bible is true. Everything it says is true. And all these pictures are not just good little stories to read to your children at bedtime. And it's not just neat little stories for us to sit and study about on a Wednesday night prayer meeting. I hope that not just Joseph, but everything that we've looked at and everything that the rest of the Old Testament holds as far as pictures of Jesus, just drives further and further and further into our heart. The veracity and the accuracy and the truthfulness and the reliability of this Bible, and the depths of its riches that a person can learn and see about Jesus, about life, about the future, about truth, about people. It's fascinating. The Bible is the book of life. It really is. All right, the end. We'll call that the end of the end of our study of Joseph. That brings us to the end of Genesis also.